God puts us in nations, in places, not by mistake, but to do a job. What if we opened our eyes to the needs of our colleagues, of our leaders, of our subordinates, and we were a priest on their behalf? Welcome to the Repurposing Business Podcast. My name is Brett Johnson.
And I'm Lynn Johnson.
And we're going to be talking about how to get our business into God's business. So thank you for joining us this week and every week on the Repurposing Business Podcast. Before we get into this week's podcast, I want to remind you of the Repurposing Business training that has radically changed the lives of thousands of people. It has given them a good understanding of the concepts of God and business, how God has been involved in work from the beginning and continues to have an interest in both what we do, to give it a purpose and meaning, and to co-labor with us in completing His business, His work. This training starts September the 7th. It'll be run twice a day, once on a Europe-Africa time frame and once on a US-North America time frame. So check out brettjohnson.biz/REP, R-E-P, or just go to brettjohnson.biz and look for the REP, and you'll be able to find out the details of the training. Sign up soon so that we can get you going on September 7th. Well, welcome to the Repurposing Business Podcast. I'm delighted to have a good friend from Africa, but living in America, like me. Manny, welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Brett. It's an honor to be with a world changer like you. So what a privilege it is to be able to get the chance to share with you a little bit today.
Manny, I'm so excited to share your story with people who are in our network, and it's just such a delight when I met you, and it was quite interesting. I said to Lynn afterwards when I came back, we were with 200 people, and I said I probably had more in common with Manny than the other 198 people. You know.
well, you know, we share something. We share a similar father. Plus, we share an African heritage, which is a powerful thing, and but also a heart for bringing transformation to the world. So I truly enjoyed every single minute I got a chance to spend with you. Brought me back to my roots, and man, I can relive that any day.
So, Manny, one of the things I think about when I hear your story is the 2 Corinthians 1 verse 4, which is to comfort others with the comfort wherewith you've been comforted. You know, there's lots of comfort in there, but just that principle that out of our story, God can create a story that impacts others. So why don't you take us back? Manny, of course, you're the founder of Samaritan's Feet, and you're doing an amazing work, which we'll hear about. But let's talk about how this began and take us back to your roots. What happened that caused you to be caring about children, people getting shoes on their feet in the world?
Well, you know, Brett, I grew up in the first generation Christian family. You know, I used to wake up every morning and say a prayer. I used to say, God, give me 001. That means it's okay if you don't give me breakfast. It's okay if you don't give me lunch, at least give me supper so I can make it to the next day. And I always joke around, and when people look at me, they say, there's not a chance this brother's missed a meal in his entire life, you know, but that was my reality. You know, at the age of 9, my job, I always ask people if they ever watch Discovery Channel to look up at just how deep and how wide and how broad the love of God is. And you know, I used to be that kid that used to sit carrying baskets on their heads selling things at parks and marketplaces in Africa. But my job used to be to sell water and soft drinks for my mother to athletes. They used to come play sports by my house. Yeah. Where one day in Lagos, Nigeria, when I was 9 years old selling soft drinks and water, there was this group of missionaries that came to my country to come teach African children how to play basketball. You know, like you're from Africa, everything is round and bounds. In my country, we kick them. This one, we're dribbling this one, you know, passing the ball and shooting the ball. And so I showed up there to try and join them. But because I was a street merchant, I didn't belong. So they tried to shoo me away. Yeah. So I watched.
Can I press pause over there? So for those who haven't been to Nigeria, I mean, an amazing statistic. I know about 10 years ago, over 50% of all sales, retail sales, were done by street merchants. So you're driving home through the traffic. If you need something, you roll down your window and you buy it. Could be a magazine, could be a a CD, could be chewing gum, could be water, could be a soda, could be a loaf of bread, could be anything. I mean, it's an actual big sector of how industry. I would imagine the percentage would have been much bigger when you grew up, right, Manny?
Right. I mean, everybody, I say everybody in my country were hustlers. Everybody trying to figure out a way to make a buck or two. You're either selling, soft drinks, water, you're selling chewing gum, you're selling apples, whatever it is that you can sell to make a buck. So you can add another meal to the table to extend the budget. Everybody is an entrepreneur. I tell people all the time, every African you meet is some type of version of an entrepreneur. So we learn it. It's ingrained into our ethos, into our psyche, growing up in that amazing part of Western Africa. So that was my reality. My mom was a trader. She sold a lot of things besides working for the Nigerian government. She sold alcohol. She sold, sometimes she sold fish. Sometimes she sold whatever is possible to be sold, bought the box, sold so you can make a couple extra naira. She was all about it. So she sold everything. And so I was there selling water and soft drinks. And these people came to teach us how to play basketball. So I was watching as these kids were having so much fun at this park called Roe Park in Lagos, Nigeria. And but I was a street marcher. They didn't want me to be a part. So all of a sudden, how Providence will have it. When the balls rolled around the corner by where I was standing, I quickly ran after that ball. I chased after it. I grabbed it and I snuck in to be with the sea of these kids that were dribbling and passing and playing basketball. We started dribbling the ball and passing the ball and shooting the ball. And in the middle of all this craziness, right, there was this missionary called Dave from Wisconsin. He said, we're going to have a shooting competition. And he said, the prize for the winner is going to be a new pair of tennis shoes. Brett, that place went bizarre, nuts. Every child gonna get picked. You got to realize when your parents live on less than about $1 a day, a pair of tennis shoes was like a Mercedes Benz. It was crazy. Every kid want to get picked. We were screaming, pick me, pick me, pick me. I was one of the few that got picked that day. Never played basketball before, but the shot I took, Angels took it all the way from my hand, went in the net. I ended up winning the competition, becoming the first person, not just in my family, but my community to own a pair of tennis shoes. It was unbelievable. I mean, I was so excited. And then this guy called David called me to the front and presented me the shoes. And you could have seen the smile on my face. I was so elated. I was so excited. And all I want to do was run home. Right before I took off, this brother grabbed me by my shoulder. And he said, son, he said, just because all you see around you is poverty doesn't mean the God of the universe has forgotten about you. He says, son, keep dreaming and keep dreaming big. Brett, he could have told me that day the sky was green. I would have believed him. And after I finished speaking, I took off. I ran so fast, I forgot my basket of soft drinks and water until I showed up at home. And my mama looked at me and said, son, where's my soft drinks and water? I said, Mama, check out my shoes. And she was so happy for me. And a few minutes later, she said, son, you better go bring my water back, or else tonight you about to meet Jesus. You know what I'm saying? So I ran all the way back to the park, man, praying, God, let this basket of soft drinks be there, because I was about to have an unbelievable early exit from this part of the world to come see you in heaven. But it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, a defining moment in my life. My home life was somewhat challenging because of my father's choice to drink alcohol and struggle with some of the other things. And so basketball became my escape. I started playing basketball quite a bit and enjoying what I did playing basketball. After my junior high and high school, I went to my coach and I told my coach, I said, Coach, I have a dream to go play basketball in America. And he laughed at me. He said, man, Emmanuel, he said, he called me actually by my Nigerian name, Tokwe. He said, you're not fast enough. You're not big enough. You're not good enough. He was one of the best encouragers I've ever heard. He said, what makes you think you can get a scholarship in America? I said, I don't know, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to go because I truly believe I'm called. I believe I'm supposed to go there to go play basketball. He said, man, you got some balls, man. In fact, you actually came to me and asked me if you can get a scholarship. I said, Coach, all I'm asking for is a shot. He said, well, that's pretty courageous of you. He said, I don't know if you ever get a scholarship, but I'm going to give you some names of schools. So he gave me some names of schools in America. So I took him down. I went back to our house. I wrote them letters like we did. In those days, we didn't have, 40 years ago, we didn't have all this fancy recruiting tools like the college athletes have today. We wrote letters, and I was, to my dismay, to my surprise, I had ended up getting 5 scholarship interests from schools in America. Well, Brett, I didn't know much about this country. I've heard about New York. I heard about Los Angeles, and I heard about Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
So I said, I'll pick the school with the best looking brochure. So I picked the University of North Dakota in Lake Region. Until I showed up in North Dakota, Brett, I said, I've done something wrong to God. This is the coldest place in the entire world, man. I showed up there and I couldn't believe how cold it was, but became one of the best decisions of my life. Ended up meeting my future bride at that college. I transferred after 2 years from going to school there, and my president actually recommended me to go to this university in Minnesota called Concordia College because they have one of the premier international relations and international business programs there in that neck of the wood. Because I truly believe I was going to go around the UN food program one day because I knew I was hungry, and I believed that many of the kids, just like me, would never go hungry again. So guess what, Brett? After I finished my undergrad, I went to North Dakota State to get my master's in applied economics and agricultural economics. And my emphasis was on supply chain and transportation. So I said, I want to understand the intricacies of what it takes to produce food, market food, and logistically transport food so kids can actually have the best experience of their life. Well, I didn't realize God had a different plan. You said it at the top of this conversation, said sometimes God allow us to use our misery and turn it into a ministry. And it's amazing that the focus that I thought will never become the epicenter and the pillar of my life will become the cornerstone of that which I'm used to help impact the world. That's crazy. So I was a very good student in grad school. I was actually one of the top students in my program nationally. So I was invited to this conference in San Diego, California. I still remember showing up in San Diego saying, man, I've done so, man, this is the place I belong. San Diego should have been where I should have showed up at, but it was pretty cool. I met this Singaporean brother who was the head of a new software company that he just launched in this city called Charlotte, North Carolina. So he approached me. He said, Manny, do you want a job? I said, absolutely, I want a job. He said, he'd like to fly me to Charlotte. So Brett, I said, where's Charlotte? He said, why are you asking me this question? I said, the last time I didn't ask that question, I showed up in North Dakota. I wasn't about to make that mistake twice. So I ended up moving to Charlotte, North Carolina, joined this software company in the supply chain space. It was right at the way before the beginning of the internet boom, and things were going so well. We went through the VC round, merged with another company out of actually Costa Mesa, California. And then I left that company, joined another one in New York, and commuting back and forth to New York from Charlotte. And then my wife didn't want to move to New York, but through that process, one of my friends was starting a new software company in Charlotte. So I moved back and came back and joined that software company right here in Charlotte. But through all this process in 1997 or so, probably a few years before this, my father got really sick. And I always tell people in life that God always allows us to make our choices, but seldom will he ever allow us to pick our consequences. My father's choice to abuse the alcohol eventually caught up with him because he was diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver. But through that process, my father passed away. But the beauty of the story is 2 weeks before my father passed away, he came to know Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. It was one of the best days of my life, one of the best experiences. So I look forward one day to see my father in heaven. But I had to go back to Africa and to Nigeria to go bury my dad. And I remember flying back to Nigeria, forgotten how economically challenged we were because I've been gone for so long. It was so tough that I couldn't even use the bathroom in my own house. I had to go across the street to the park where I used to go sell water. And I remember coming out of that park and seeing all these kids at the park in Lagos, seeing them with no shoes, seeing them with no hope. And that's when God departed in my spirit. What if I can start coming to help children just like me? And providing them new shoes, just like I received, and depositing in their spirit, into their mind, to their psyche, that the God of the universe has a plan for their life too. That he created them for a purpose, and he can also use them to accomplish great things. But it took me about 5 years. And, my wife and I decided to pray about the calling. We knew we had a bigger call in our life. So in 2003, we finally said yes to the Lord. But it took a series of things that actually led us to that decision, which I wish we can tell you. If you get a copy of my book, Soul Purpose, you can read more about that. But it was pretty amazing. We decided to start this organization called Samaritan's Feet. And I learned that over 300 million kids in Africa wake up each day with no shoes on their feet. I learned that over 1.5 billion with a B were infected with soil-transmitted parasites and infection because they have no shoes. So I said, somebody ought to do something about this. I mean, that's 1.5 billion with a B.
1.5 billion are getting parasites through the soles of their feet because they don't have shoes.
Yes, around the world. And these are situations that we can eradicate just like this. And we in the Western world, shoes for us is a fashion accessory.
You're right.
I mean, to most people around the world, it's actually a vehicle to help them survive. It's their primary mode of transportation. In a place like Ethiopia, that they have this condition called podoconiosis, without shoes, because they farm in silica, this soil attacks their soul, attacks their nerve, and eats away at their structure of their feet. It blows up. It looks like elephantiasis.
Wow.
Because they have no shoes.
Wow.
In places like Uganda and Kenya, Nigeria, in Cameroon and Colombia, they have jiggers that comes in that burrows through the soil, finds opening in their toenails or different cuts on their feet and burrows through their transport through their blood. And it looks like they got leprosy.
Wow.
Because they have no shoes. And there are conditions like that, like ringworm, that affects millions of people all across the world because they have no protective covering on their feet. So I said, somebody ought to do something about this, because without shoes, they couldn't go to school. At that time, I didn't realize that somebody was going to be me. Mm-hmm. Well, in 2003, my wife and I set on a journey to start this organization called Samaritan's Feet, with a vision to go put shoes in the feet of 10 million people around the world. And we said, we're just not going to give them the shoes and bring in a truckload of shoes and start handing them out and passing them out. But we're actually going to have an intricate moment with every recipient, that we're going to sit in front of them just like Jesus Christ did with his disciple before he left this earth. And one by one, we're going to wash the recipient's feet. We're going to bandage their wound and look them in the eye and ask them of their dreams. And we can tell them who the one is that can take away their pain, that has the power to be able to set them on the course to help establish a future for their life. And his name is Jesus Christ of Nazareth. And we get the chance through that process to encourage them and inspire them and deposit hope into their life. We remind them that in spite of what they're going through, that they can have hope. And hope for us is a 4-letter acronym to have only positive expectation. And hope for us that Samaritans has actually become the cornerstone of our organization, because hope for us actually is that 4-letter acronym that stands for health. H is the health, to help improve health outcomes for people all across the globe. O is to create opportunities by providing access for kids to go to school and jobs for people, because in the future here, Brett, we hope to establish a manufacturing facility in Africa to start manufacturing shoes so we can create jobs for people. P is about advocating for peace, creating bridge so we can use service as a platform to help create an environment where people that used to be at odds, at enemy with each other, will live in peace and harmony because of what God has done. And E is to create access to education, teaching the model, the lesson that Christ taught us through the Good Samaritan story, and that's now been codified as a way to transform people to those folks that are reconcilers, the interruptible reconcilers, that don't see problems, but see opportunities that can innovate and be a part of bringing hope and healing to people that are hurting in our world. So that's what we've been doing. And since we started, Brett, we've now served over 9 million people in over 109 countries, over 44 or 45 U.S. states across the United States, and 530 plus U.S. cities. For a kid that didn't have shoes, we now manufacture our own shoes. We use shoes to engage corporate entities as part of their CSR effort. We use shoes to engage financial institutions to meet a lot of their CRA effort. We use shoes as a way to be able to engage communities, to be able to come together to bring not just healing, but reconciliation and hope to their community. So that way, we just not only treating people by providing humanitarian assistance, but providing a vehicle that we can invite the God of the universe into their environment.
So Manny, there's something unique about you. Some people might say, "Wow, why manufacture your own shoes? Because you can just buy them in China or in somewhere else." But there is something unique about your shoes, right?
Absolutely. So 6 years ago, we started this. We had this idea. When we learned that there were this disease of the poor in the world called neglected tropical disease. They call it neglected because many of the pharmaceutical companies can't take care of them because there's not enough profits into that to be able to take care of the poor. And one thing that we've learned, Brett, is that poverty is this cyclical model that creates this cyclical model of dependence that allows people to be stuck. Because of poverty, they have bad hygiene. Because of bad hygiene, they live in this condition that gets them stuck in this lifestyle of poverty, and this cycle continues to go around and around. So we invented this idea called our world shoe. the first of its kind in the world, a shoe that actually has an active disease-fighting antimicrobial property that's actually embedded as part of that injection molding process. But also, we didn't want this shoe, after people use the shoes for 2, 3, 4 years and they discard them, we don't want to be an environmental nuisance, just like many people do around the globe. We actually incorporate as part of the manufacturing process an eco-pure, like a biodegradable property into the shoe. So when the shelf life of the shoe is over, we can bury the shoes in the ground, and within 15 years or plus, you'll biodegrade. Because we don't want to be adding, like things into our landfills that create all this other future problem for our environment.
Right.
So we've been manufacturing the shoes right now in the United States for the last 6 years through a contract relationship we have in the manufacturer here. But we also know that the true essence of what Christ taught us is to go teach to become fishers of men. So we just want to be this vehicle that's just providing fish to people, but how do we create a platform that teach them how to fish, how to capture the fish? So we said, what if we created an economic development platform that moves us from a human development model for meeting humanitarian assistance to an economic development model that allows us to be able to establish a manufacturing facility in Africa? So we've got a vision over the next 10 years to establish a series of manufacturing facility in many parts around the world. So we're looking at a place like in Ghana, in West Africa right now, as one of the first places that we're hoping by the grace of God that we'll be able to establish our first manufacturing facility over the next 12 months. Our hope is to be able to manufacture at least over 1 million pairs of shoes a year at this facility that will create jobs, create an opportunity to continue to be able to advocate for healing and health as part of a global health platform, while also being part of a solution that's helping to impact and transform community for the lifetime.
So what does it cost to set up one of these factories in Africa, either in Ghana, or I know you were looking at South Africa as well, right?
Absolutely. So we're looking at South Africa, we're looking at Rwanda, we're looking at Ghana for Africa. We're looking at possibly somewhere in Guatemala or Nicaragua, like in Latin America and probably India in the future, but it could range. I mean, we can establish anywhere from about $10 to $12 million, establish a manufacturing facility that actually can allow us to employ anywhere from 200 to 300 people, producing over 1 million pairs of shoes a year. And then creating a platform to be able to team up with a humanitarian organization like Samaritan, because this will be a for-profit entity that will allow us to be able to manufacture the shoes for profit, that we can then donate proceeds from that to a humanitarian organization that can then take this world shoes, which actually, this is one of the pictures of that world shoe right here that people can actually take a look at, that they can actually see. And that shoe can be used as a way to go provide access for kids to go to school, prevent diseases for people that don't have shoes. Farm workers provide a lot of this Wellington boots for them so they can actually work by keeping them from getting diseases, but also using this machine to create things like soccer balls so we can create recreational activities, but while we can also monetize those opportunities, but also be able to advance and accelerate a lot of our humanitarian objective.
Yeah, well, I'm sure some of our listeners are going to be interested in what it would look like to be part of getting factories set up, because that's a fantastic thing. And to see the manufacturing take place in different parts of Africa, Latin America, that is amazing. That is amazing. So Manny,
it's a game changer. I mean, I think it moves nonprofits to look at holistic sustainability strategy that's beyond just us being professional beggars asking for donations all the time. But we can actually restructure and look at how us as social enterprises can exist to create a platform that allows us to do good while also generating profit to be able to sustain the work that we're doing long term.
Yeah, and job creation is such a big deal, around the world, actually, among youth particularly, but it's a big deal. And so, so you're dealing with multiple issues at the same time, the health issues, the life issues, and so forth. So Manny, you mentioned your goal was 10 million and you're up on 9 million already. You must be in an exciting time, right?
Well, it is, Brett. I mean, we excited. We're actually counting down. God willing, next year we will serve our 10th million recipients. We're pretty excited about what that is. And as we create this manufacturing facilities around the world that allows us to be able to address and work with, world stakeholders in global health and government organization and agencies that can partner with us. We truly believe we can set a new counter in motion to count to zero shoeless people in our lifetime. When we set out a goal to go serve 10 million, about 19 years ago, my friends thought, Manny, you've gone crazy. What do you mean you're going to serve 10 million? You know what, 10 million? That's actually 20 million feet. I said, yes, now we can say we've done it. So when we serve our 10 million, that means we've served 20 million feet and 20 million opportunity for them to go walk in their destiny.
Yeah. Amazing, amazing. Now, are you planning to do that back in the park where you started? I hope so.
Well, I hope we're going to do that at our park, but also we're going to do it in probably over there in Mitchell's Plains, South Africa. That's actually one of the first places we went to go deliver shoes when we started Samaritan Speak. Cape Town has a very special place in my heart. There was the first, South Africa was the first country we went to go deliver shoes in when we started in 2003. And I still remember working with my dear friend, John Pascal there in Westridge Baptist Church over at Mitchell's Plains, serving our first amazing. We went there with 1,000 pairs of shoes breadth. And after we served 1,000 persons, there were over 2,000 people outside waiting for shoes. Parents trying to throw their children over the fence because of something that we take for granted in this country as a fashion accessory. That's when I realized that there was a huge need in the world and we ought to do something about it.
Wow. And South Africa is relatively well off compared to many other countries. So if there was a need in South Africa like that, then that's interesting. So which month of 2003 were you in Cape Town? Do you remember?
Yeah, we were actually in November. It was November of 2003 was our first Samaritan Speak International Shoes Up Hope event there in Cape Town. We stayed. I still remember in Fishhook, one of my favorite beaches. Just a beautiful, quasi summer day, and the people love me. Just going over there to Ocean Basket, eating the amazing seafood, and driving all the way to Stellenbosch. I said, oh man, I think I'm heaven on earth right here, man.
That's right. Yeah, my wife was a teacher in Fishhook for 5 years, and we were in South Africa. Actually, we took our first repurposing business teams into Cape Town in April 2003. We were back again in October, so we were there around about the same time.
Wow.
So that's fascinating. So we have some more things in common. That's great. Well, that is very, very exciting, Manny. So it's amazing the ripple effect of this, because it's, you can count 20 million feet, but it's hard to quantify what has this done in their lives, because you're not going to know for many of these people. I mean, you might hear anecdotally, but just the ripple effect that it can have of you and your wife choosing to be obedient and to do something, leaving a lucrative career in software and other things. And what I love about this, as well as there are many people who grow up in a difficult circumstance and they don't want to talk about it again. They want to put it behind them. They don't want to go back there, and you've probably seen this. I know there's a big diaspora of people from different parts of Africa and statistically from Nigeria, of course. For the listeners, right now, I think there's the numbers are roughly about 90 million entrepreneurs in Africa. 45 million of them are in Nigeria. And that's what the stats are that I've seen, and Nigerians have a big footprint. But often when you get out of a situation like that, you grew up in as an area boy or whatever it might be. You grew up in one of those things. And I remember once going to a church in one of the areas, and they had it in like a soccer stadium. They had this church, and while the worship team was leading the worship, and the ushers were all dressed in their bright color outfits, and so you could see them, and you had these people really from the streets were there, and one of the guys made his way up onto the stage, but as he worshiped, his pants started falling more and more down. And one of the deacons just danced up behind him and just hiked his pants up. Nobody stopped him, but that was an area boy, And, people don't want to go back. So I commend you, Manny, for going back and saying, man, this was my story, and this can become the story of many other people who otherwise, but for a pair of shoes and a word of encouragement, and I guess a praying mom, right?
Well, I mean, it's like my mom's played a huge role in my life. I always tell people when you live with somebody that has some addictive personalities, the ones that are closest to the most are the ones that hurt the most. There was a season in my life that I didn't hear a lot of positive things from my father, the things that's a while back they used to re-echo in my mind is how much he used to tell me that I'll never amount to anything, and every time he'll say all these things to me, and my mom will come behind him and put her hands on my head, and she'll say in the name of Jesus, whatever mean or evil thing this man says to my son would never come to pass, because my God has promised me that my son can do all things through him who gives him strength. And it's amazing. Sometimes I'll go to my mom, Brett, and I'll say, Mom, then why do we have to live so poor? Why do we have to live like this? And I always like to share this aspect of my story because and we used to have this small window by the, like in one of the rooms in my 2-bedroom place that me and my entire siblings that I grew up in a place with 6 other biological siblings, 1 adopted sibling. So 8 of us children lived there, and my mom and dad and 3 uncles and an aunt. We live in 2 bedrooms. She'll tell me, man, talk way. I want you to look outside and tell me what you see. And I'll look outside and say, Mom, I see the trees. They say, son, you're not looking high enough, look higher. And she said, what do you see? And I said, Mom, I said, the birds. And I said, son, you're not looking high enough. And in a very deep Nigerian Yoruba accent, said, tell me, look higher. What do you see? And she said, I see the clouds. And then she said, you ever wonder why God created the sky so high? And I'll say, I don't know, Mama. And she'll say, so poor boys like you can dream real high. He said, never make an excuse for life. That just because today may be a crap, it doesn't mean tomorrow ain't going to be a greater day. As long as my God is on the throne, that you can do all things. She believed in me before even I knew what the word believe meant. And, she gave me the name Emmanuel because actually there's a story behind my name. If you have some time, check out Soul Purpose and you can read about the reason behind my name because it's pretty profound. I remember my mom telling me when I was old enough to be able to speak, she said, I gave you to God and you're going to serve God. And I said to her, my mom, I'm going to be a businessman. Never in my life ever thinking that I was going to bring the cross section of business and ministry together. I didn't realize she was a prophet prophesying way back when I was just born. So now I just joke around whenever she says what she, I say, yeah, I believe it, Mama. Because you have direct access to the King. You're listening and you're talking. And then I see what God has done in my life. We've worked with professional athletes. I mean, in the United States, professional soccer team. Even in South Africa, I have team ambassador, the Springbok 7, from their coach to the players. In the United States, NFL players, NBA players, college, NCAA coaches, NIL athletes that's using their platform to be able to encourage, working with presidents of countries, leaders and governors of states, because we want leaders to understand the power of what it means to be humble. I tell people oftentimes that service to others emancipates humanity from the dungeon of themselves, because when they understand the power of service, they understand how powerful and how strong and how great they could be in the kingdom of God.
Yeah. So Manny, what has the biggest impact, the washing the feet or the giving the shoes?
I tell you what, I tell people all the time, the shoes has a role in preventing access to school and saving people's life. But the washing of the feet does 2 things. It brings about a mutual transformation, a transformation for the receiver and also the giver. Because it messes you up. You that is the one that washing feet, your life is getting changed just as much as the receiver. And there's a transaction that happens that receiver will never forget. So is you, who is a servant. And that to me is the beauty and the power of what Christ taught us. He said, let the greatest amongst you understand the power of what it means to serve. Because therein lies, said, if you do this, you'll be blessed. And I've seen the blessing in many ways. I've seen kids that used to live in abject poverty rise from that and see the prospect on the horizon of what God can do, because somebody chose to slow down and impact and hope into their situation. And that couldn't happen by just us handing them shoes. But when we get the chance to give them shoes, we get a chance to invite the King and the God of the universe into that situation, it brings life-giving and life-transforming change that none of us will truly be able to understand what the true impact of that transaction is going to be.
Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, I've certainly been in a few situations of washing feet and having your feet washed, but I kind of wonder as you're speaking, I wonder how many business owners. I have a business owner friend in Cape Town, and one day he comes into the office and there's boxes all over the office and so on. And he's like, I didn't order this stuff. And his wife had purchased new uniforms, shoes, everything for the staff. But I wonder what it would have been like if he washed their feet.
Oh, it will mess you up, Brad. It will mess you up. I promise you that. Look what it did to Simon Peter. He said, "Man, God, you can't wash my feet." He said, "If you don't wash my feet, you have no part of me." He said, "Not just my feet, my entire body." He said, "Man, your body's been washed. Man, I have no reason to mess with your body, but your feet, that I need to do." And it's crazy when we do this, Brad. I remember, the late president, John Nkwama from Zimbabwe, and Margaret Mujuru, the vice president of Zimbabwe, invited us when they were having some conflict. And we created an initiative with them, and then the late Prime Minister Shangarai, where we went across the entire country, every single province from Harare to Bulawayo, and got leaders. I mean, I'm talking vice president and MPs and governors washing each other's feet and reading their peace declaration. It was called our shoes for national healing. And when the president of Burundi heard what we were doing, the late PM Nkurunziza, he said, this needs to happen because my country just went through a major genocide with the Hutus and Tutsis. He said, I want to see this materialize in my country. I still remember him inviting us, me sitting in the president's office and saying, I want to experience that which you talk about when we go wash people's feet, just like my creator and my Christ did. And we set it up. I remember the first time we did it was in a little village called Bubanza on the outskirts of Bujumbura in Burundi. I still remember the presidential entourage beat everybody there because they had the military, and we showed up and thousands of people were there. And the first person that the president washed his feet was a Tua, this native pygmy person where they were untouchable. Nobody used to touch them. And I still remember that pygmy lifted his hands. He said, oh my God, there got to be a God in heaven. The president of Burundi washed my feet. And he said, I believe that pygmy will tell his children's children that the president of Burundi, Federal Republic of Burundi, washed his feet. And after they did that, here he is, this Hutu leader was washing the feet of the Tutsi. You should see the media went crazy. He said, reconciliation begins in my house. And after that, Hutus were washing the feet of Tutsis, and Tutsis were washing the feet of Hutus. It was one of the most powerful healing and reconciliation move I've ever seen in my lifetime. And from that, we've done things in the United States. We've done things in places like Peru, where people that used to be enemy will come together using foot washing, what we never thought would be an act of reconciliation, was an example that Christ modeled. Now God is leveraging that to bring healing and peace to places that are inflicted with conflict, just because Christ modeled that to us. Now we're carrying it forward because we want to be able to inherit that promise. He said, if you do this, you'll be blessed.
Wow. Very powerful, and challenging. It's challenging, I must say. That's amazing. So practically, Manny, I know next week you're off to Kentucky, or you're off to Tennessee, to different places. You go to universities and places. From what I understand, you've got a link back to your basketball, right? You get a basketball team. Were you in Haiti last week doing this, right? So
we were in Costa Rica last week. We were also in Bahamas last week. So we were working with Tulane University and the basketball team, serving a couple thousand people between Bahamas and Costa Rica. We have it. You've got this future NBA players that they've put on pedestal. You've got coaches like John Calipari and Ron Hunter from Tulane and University of Kentucky, humbling themselves and washing their feet. You've got coaches like, Jeff Jones from Old Dominion and these top-rated universities across the United States, understanding that they want to teach these young future athletes the power of what it means to be a servant leader. Because there lies the essence, because we tell them, see, in life, you're going to know fame and fortune, but what you're going to do with it. See, the ultimate joy you find is when you give your life in service to others. And that's a gift we get to give them. So across from coast to coast, from Alaska all the way to Florida, we serve people in over 45 states. I mean, we have corporations from Truist to Tommy John's, to Coca-Cola, to Gordon Food Services, you name it, from Republic Airways. They leverage Samaritan's feet as a calling card to serve the neediest of the neediest in their community as part of their, corporate responsibility program. the CSRF, they want to be able to engage and activate community service where they live, where they work, and where they play. So Samaritan provides a turnkey opportunity for a corporation to be able to sponsor a pair of shoes. In the United States, we actually deliver exclusively athletic shoes because most of the kids we serve in the United States are Title I schools, elementary, middle school, even high school kids. But we also serve adults. We serve homeless citizens. We serve senior shoe. We actually created a fall-resistant shoe, a senior citizen shoes that allow senior citizens to not fall, because one of the leading causes of injury for seniors in our country and around the world is falling. So we've actually worked with one of the major healthcare institutions that creates a senior shoe program that we can go into senior centers and serve them with podiatrists, providing a lot of the examination and providing shoes for them. Refugees that's coming to our countries, we get the chance to welcome them with our smile, with our joy, and providing them a first pair of shoes as a gift to welcome them in this country. It's amazing to think about what we could do. So corporations can partner with us, foundations can partner with us, churches can partner with us, foundations can partner, governments can partner with us, healthcare systems can partner with us, because it's more than just providing shoes for education. It's also advocating for health. It's also advocating for opportunity. It's also advocating for unity. So it's all those potential that we can come together and do some great things together.
That's an amazing work, Manny. It's amazing. Well done. How many people on your team, just so we get a sense?
It's so funny. So we've got about 50 full-time staff around the world, but over 200,000 volunteers. So I tell people that we have one of the largest staff. We just pay them on kingdom currency. You know what I'm saying?
There we go.
So I tell people, when it's how big of a staff, we have over 200,050 staff. 50 of them we have to actually write a check for every single month. The other one we pay on kingdom currency.
I love it. Love it. Yeah. One of the principles that I like about this is something we've done work with business leaders over the years, is to come up with a product design that actually solves a problem that hasn't been solved before. In other words, there's many, many products on the mind of God that can address a need. So if you bring the need, okay, so we need the antibacterial shoe, we need the ones that are biodegradable and so on. What else is on the mind of God? And it's a good reminder for us to ask, okay, I make this, I produce that, I do that. Would God do it differently? If he designed this, if he did it differently, and asking God. So I love the creative process there, and that you're thinking about how to not just provide any old shoe, but coming up with something that's better. And so I love that. I think that's an important part of our co-creating with God.
Amen. Well, because, I tell people all the time, God had something in mind that made our creation necessary. My dear friend, the late Miles Monroe used to tell me every time I go visit him, when I was in Bahamas last week, I still remember driving by, and may his soul rest in peace, as they rest and joy in heaven. But it's amazing to think about. He used to tell us, man, you were on God's mind. You had a problem that was on God's mind that made your creation necessary. And I still remember hosting him a number of times here in Charlotte, spending time with him, going to his home and being part of what he did there in the Bahamas. But I'll never forget. There's a lot of innovation that's on God's mind, that he's looking for conduits of people that he wants to use that to get to the world. I tell people all the time, and it was actually Miles that told me this years ago. He said the wealthiest place in the world was the cemetery. I never understood what it meant when he first told me that story. But I finally realized it, because he said the wealthiest place in the world was the cemetery, because therein lies vision that were never executed, innovation that the people took to the grave. Some of the best-selling movies and best-selling books that were never written because people were so scared to live out their purpose. He said one of the things that's actually worse than death is a man that lives without purpose. So I want to encourage and challenge every single listener that's listening to you and I today, that said, whatever it is that God has purposed and placed into you, please don't take it to the grave. Use it to bring our Father fame and bring glory to his name by living out a purpose, so the world wouldn't be robbed of the wealth that was supposed to come through you to the world.
Amen. Manny, do you have any questions you ask people to help them discover their purpose?
I always like to, I actually like to ask, whenever I see people, if money wasn't an issue, how would you change the world? Okay. Because oftentimes most successful business people will tell you give you a million reasons why they can't do and go pursue their why.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's the fear of the economics or the fear of their responsibility, their commitments, and all the other things. But if we can put that aside, even money wasn't an issue, how would you change the world? I remember flying between Curitiba, Brazil, and Sao Paulo years ago, and there was a young man called Guilherme by the name William in Portuguese. He was sitting next to me in business class. I was wearing this athletic suit, and I saw him. It was an investment banker. He was actually working on this, spreadsheet, this financial model. And I kind of picked on this laptop, his Apple computer. And I said, man, that looks like a very sophisticated model. He said, what do you know about a model? He thought I was just a basketball jock. I said, well, I used to dabble a day or two when I was in the software business, when I was in the fundraising world. So he said, what do you do? I said, I'm a professional foot washer. I go around the world and wash people's feet. And I still remember Guilherme looked at me and said, what do you mean you go around the world and wash people's feet? And so I asked him that question. I said, if money wasn't an issue, how would you change the world? And it was like his world collapsed and his disposition changed. Everything about him changed. He closed the laptop because before that, I was asking him what he was doing. He was telling me how he was part of this investment bank and I was doing all this stuff, how he likes to buy and invest and grow and sell and flip. And the more he spoke, the more excited he got. And I said, do you have a family? He said, oh, yes, I do. I have a girl and I'm about to have another son. And I said, that's when I asked him that question. Yeah. And I said, if money wasn't an issue, how would you change the world? He said, you know what? I'll go to the barrios of Sao Paulo and I'll provide them trumpets and musical instruments. And I'll go challenge them to live out their purpose through music. I said, well, then go do it. He said, I can't go do it. He said, I've got responsibility. I've got children. I've got a son coming. I've got this big house I just bought. And he keeps giving me one excuse after the excuse. And I said, Guilherme, he said, maybe you are the conduit that God has purposed to become the vehicle of hope, to activate hope on that little child, over Felipe on the other side of Sao Paulo that can go be the next Winston Marsalis. You don't know. Don't go to the grave with your purpose. It's amazing. Guilherme and I, from that day, a couple of days after he landed in Sao Paulo, he said he couldn't sleep. The Holy Spirit kept waking him up and reminding him of that question. Yeah. And he called me, he said, I went and researched what you did. I went and researched the need for shoes and a social enterprise. There's not such a thing in Brazil. He and I ended up starting a business together in Brazil to start manufacturing shoes. But because of the economic challenge in Brazil, we actually had to shut that business down. But he started with that question, Brett. Yeah. If money wasn't an issue, how would you change the world? And for about 5 years, we did business together. And it shows you what can happen when you choose to get out of your own way and become an interruptible reconciler, to be a conduit that can remind people some of the things that was on God's mind. And please be that for somebody else. Don't just live for yourself, live for others, because therein lies the true essence of one's full joy.
Yeah, wonderful. I love it. Well, Manny, I think that's a great way to wrap up today. And bless you as you walk out your purpose and encourage others to inspire them. So how can we find your website? What's your website?
Please, you can go to SamaritanSpeed.org, www.SamaritanSpeed.org. You can learn about me. If you want to have me come speak, I'm a public speaker. You can go to MannyOhonme.com and book it. And then you can get a copy of my book anywhere you can find it, Soul Purpose. Read it. I promise you're going to laugh, you're going to cry, but it will inspire you to go live out your purpose.
I'm looking forward to that, Manny, and we'll put those links in the footnotes, and we appreciate your time. Thank you so much. God bless you, and I look forward to joining you sometime in Nigeria, where we end up there together. And otherwise, we're close neighbors here on the Southeast, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Manny, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a blessed day.
Blessings to you too. Bye for now. Thanks for being with us on the podcast this week. It was great to have you. Remember, the Repurposing Business training starts September 7th. Make sure you head over to brettjohnson.biz/REP and you'll be able to find out about that training. Come, bring some friends. It's on Zoom, so you can do it from anywhere in the world, 2 different time zones. Come and join us. You will not be disappointed.